Live. And you're live. Just waiting, 1 sec. Waiting for people to live. Yep, we're live. Welcome, everybody. I think everyone is joining. Okay, so hello, everyone. Welcome to our third earthquake Q&A. My name is Diego Cupolo. I'm the managing editor of Turkey Recap. This is our continued attempt, but this is our continued effort to keep focus on the earthquake zone and what's happening there. We're going to update people on conditions in Turkey's earthquake zone specifically, and the speakers were recently there or are currently there. So if you have questions, send them with the YouTube chat or by Twitter DM. For a brief recap before we start and while people are joining, it's been more than 2 months since the February 6th earthquake in Turkey and Syria. The official death count in Turkey is more than 50,000. For people that have been displaced, the numbers vary, but according to an April 7 report by the International Red Cross and Red Crescent, 2.5 million to 4 million people have been displaced. So recently, there's been a lot of rain. It's raining right now in Istanbul, where I am. And this rain has caused floods, and some tent camps have had a lot of problems. People have been displaced again after being displaced by the earthquake. There's some aid distribution problems. Some reports indicate distribution of aid is decreasing as time passes. And there's been problems with water access, drinking water. All this comes as elections are nearing in Turkey. We have news reports and politicians estimating about 2 million voters left the area. And of those 2 million that left the area, 500,000 registered to vote in the place where they're staying now. And this leaves 1.5 million people that did not register to vote elsewhere, so they will need to return to the area to vote on May 14th elections in Turkey. And the logistics of that remain unclear. We'll address some of those and what we've heard on the ground. And here to add meaning to those numbers and figures and answer your questions is Gonca Tokyol, a freelance journalist who worked for many outlets, including BBC and T24. She's recently back from Hatay. And Ingrid Woudwijk, a Turkey correspondent for the Dutch newspaper Trouw. She's in Gaziantep, and she just spent the last 2 days in Kahramanmaraş, which many people call Maraş. Both contribute to Turkey Recap. What is Turkey Recap? Turkey Recap is an independent newsletter on Turkish politics and foreign affairs run by journalists in Turkey. We are completely funded by supporters with no single donor giving more than $20 a month. We receive no funds from organizations, governments, or political parties. And that said, this event should last about an hour. If needed, we'll go over that, but not too much. And we'll take your questions against, we'll take your questions on Twitter by DM or by YouTube on the chat function. So to start, can both of you just give up updates on what you saw, where you've been, and any specific scenes that might represent the broader conditions in the region?
I was in Hatay last week, and actually before heading back there, I wasn't expecting this level of shock. I was expecting some things to at least become a little bit more normal or some problems to be solved. But when I went back to Hatay, I saw that things even get worse. and like the access to basic necessities like water and food is still problematic in the region, especially for those who are not living in the official tent camps. And a lot of people are opting not to live in those tent camps since they are far away from the city center and not enough safe for women and children. So especially in Hatay, as far as I can see, a lot of people still stays in like shift tents or small accommodation communities inside the city center. And in those places, like accessing food and water is still problematic. People search for aid on foot, mostly women. But when I was there, I visited several donation points, and most of those women returned their tents with empty hands, actually. And the worst part is there is no sign that there is a plan about the region, actually. No one can foresee the future. No one knows what is going to happen. They don't even know if like their building is going to be demolished or not, depending on the risk level. So they do not have any jobs. They don't have any incomes. They mostly dependent on the aids and donation. And like the thing that hit me most was meeting with a young man called Hassan in one of the tent camps. And he told me that a lot of people is saying like Antakya is a ghost town now. But he said that I felt like the ghost, actually, like not the town, because he said it feels like they were already dead, but no one buried them, actually. And this is the level of loneliness those people in the region feel right now, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, I was yesterday and the day before I was in Kahramanmaraş. I was there as well on the third day after the earthquake. And I also wanted to see what's the situation compared to then, because I still vividly remember that day driving into town, just hearing like sirens, ambulances, and the sound of rescue works, of cranes, of other kinds of less professional ways of digging through the rubble. It was very emotional back then. I mean, there were people just gathering mainly at the square, waiting for news from their families, loved ones still under the rubble. It really made a big impact on me. And when I came back yesterday, I couldn't find the place at first, because it was just, there was just nothing left. All the buildings were gone, all the rubble was gone, and there was just no one, just some people just like digging a bit, some children digging a bit through the rubble. I don't know what they're looking for. It was, there was very heavy rain. As like when I entered the city, there was thunder, there was lightning, lots of noise, and then really the rain started to turn into hail. Really bad conditions. I was in the car. I was like, okay, well, how will my car survive? But imagine if you're in a tent. In these tent camps, can be very muddy. So and then when I drove more into the more historic part of the town, more and more shops were open. I was quite surprised actually by how many of the shops were open. Businesses, people, it's of course logical. People have to start to earn money because they cannot, live for free, of course. But I spoke to quite some people in the bazaar that said like, yeah, we have to return. Of course, they're not selling so much because there's a lot of people that left, a lot of people have economical struggles, then you might not buy that extra pair of shoes or another nice dress. But yeah, that was really striking. They said that they would move to containers. There were some afat charge containers, like containers that were meant to be like small shops. And also a lot of people just started to sell stuff from the back of their car or another kind of more less official ways. But that was striking to me because the last time I was there, it was like a complete different situation. People say, yeah, we have to try to. I mean, they are not going back to normal right now, but at least they try to. To find at least some kind of normalcy in the situation. But still, I mean, then you're walking through the bazaar, and then there are shops, and then suddenly there's a hole because the complete shop just was like there was just a hole where there used to be a shop. So I mean, it's of course not returning back to normalcy, but I mean, at least people will try to start working again, or start shopping again, go out for dinner during iftar. Those kind of things were kind of surprising to me in Marash.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up question. I was talking to someone who had been to Malatya, and they said 80% of the city's residents, the central Malatya residents, had left. What's the sense of the population that's inside the cities right now, out of what you saw in Hatay and Marash? What percentage of the city would you say is still there, the population-wise?
In Marash, it was really varying district by district, because in the higher regions, there were still, most of the houses were okay. Apparently, it's because of the soil or the ground is supposed to be better. Because I came across two people working for the public prosecutor. They said they were doing research, taking samples of the columns, and the building, they're doing research in how there was built. And they said it didn't look good because parts of the town previously were some kind of fields. And then they built this, 10, 15-story apartments, which, they completely collapsed. So it depends a little bit on the place in the city, because the further you go up, Marash is a little bit on the hill. The further you go up, the situation is better. But I think in the city center, these older historical buildings, 1-2 stories, most of them are still fine. But then then you drive a little bit further, and then one block is completely gone. So I maybe in some parts it's 80% gone, other percent 80% is still there. So it's a little bit difficult to count. But the further you go up, it's better, and people are just moving towards with family or relatives if they have that. So in terms of population, difficult to say, but it was not a ghost town like Hatay, for sure not.
Yes, it's different for Hatay, according to percentage that the head of the Antakya's Chamber of Commerce gave last week, more than 90% of the population in the central Hatay left the city. But the situation is a little bit different in Hatay, because there are a lot of villages which were used by the locals before the earthquake to stay during the weekends and etc. So many people in the city had some village homes. So significant part of the population just relocated to those villages around the city center, actually. So I went to a village called Aknehir, and they told me that their population was actually tripled after the earthquake, because people just moved next to their relatives or friends or mother and father. But the city center is almost kind of deserted right now. Some neighborhoods, there is no electricity. It's not very safe to travel around them during the night when there is no sun. So when you're in the city center, it's not very easy to find anyone after it gets dark.
Yeah. Thank you. So, you know, there's elections coming in Turkey and it's taking a lot of attention in the news cycle. So I was wondering how many, let's say, what are some key developments or trends that you notice that maybe are not being mentioned in the earthquake? In a previous recap, Gonca reported on the lack of women's hygiene products, things like this. Are there like key problems that you don't see mentioned broadly in Turkish media or international media?
Oh. Like, there are still children in the region and there is no plan for education also. One of the settlements that I visited, there was a like sister and brother and there was nothing to do for them. So like I'm actually very nervous about the future of the children from the region, both about the ones who left in the area, also the ones who just like relocated to other cities with their families because they just experienced a big trauma with earthquakes and now they're experiencing a new trauma with this relocation. And like besides of that, a lot of people reporting about that, but there is also still a big environmental issue about like moving to rubbles. In Hatay, you can like with every breath, you can sense that you can inhaling something dangerous. It's just making your head ache, and like some people like reported they vomited after visiting the area and etc. So like we are always talking about the asbestos and they are like dumping the rubbles to there and there, but like actually we should just consider that those rubbles are like filled with tons of dangerous chemicals, including the ones that are like present in our computers and TVs and other electronics that we have daily in our houses. Those are still under those rubbles too. So like, as well as a lot of other things, Turkey really needs a good like rubble removal plan for the environment.
Yeah, and I mean, from Marash also, I mean, there was at least one school that was started operating again. There were still, I mean, half of the children died, including some of the teachers. So it's, I mean, also very difficult to go back to school because every day you see that, I mean, so many people that are missing. But at least, I mean, they are starting again. But I think also, I mean, it really depends on certain areas. I think neighborhoods that were already kind of like lower economic standards, maybe not as engaged as other neighborhoods. I mean, there was like also in the afternoon I visited kind of like, it was not a tent camp, but it was just where previously a school was. They put some tents, like maybe 40, 50 tents or something. And I asked the children, are you going to school? I was like, yeah, there is a camp. There's a school and a container camp across the road, but we are not going. And they were just hanging around there all day. And just like I was with my camera, and immediately they got so, I mean, you saw that they like were kind of really excited to see something new or something different than, you know, the like the small area that they were living with their family in a small tent. So yeah, I think also, I mean, this will of course have long-term consequences if children, I mean, maybe they used to go to school, of course, but yeah, they didn't seem to, I mean, the parents also didn't seem to be like such a issue. They were just living, I mean, they were not living actually, they were just surviving, standing in line for food. Then the food truck didn't show up, so they were left. Yeah, I mean, then there was no lunch. I mean, since the elders were fasting, the food was mainly for the children, but since the municipality didn't come, that meant there was no real food for the children. So it's this kind of like day to day, yeah, that's like they are not able to return to school or not able to provide for their own food. That are things that are worrying to me as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and those are important points to highlight, especially on education, because kids had already faced COVID disruptions to their education. So the same generation is getting delayed in that part of Turkey, and it's hard to make up those classes, I would imagine, afterwards. So we'll see how the education system handles that. Most of the questions we got before we started this live stream were in relation to the elections and how they would be executed in the earthquake region due to all the complications that come with a massive natural disaster and voting and how to register people and their addresses. So, as we said before, reports and politicians, Kılıçdaroğlu and the Zafer Party presidential candidate Sinan Oğan today met. They both talked about this as well. There's an estimated 1.5 earthquake survivors that did not change their address, who live in the earthquake region and will have to vote in the earthquake region. So what does this mean? Do you see any attempts to organize the elections? Have you talked to any party officials or voters that know what to do regarding the elections in the earthquake region?
I haven't talked with any officials actually, but during my talks with voters, I haven't heard any solid plans about how people will be moved back to their voting places and etc. And it's going to be a very big logistic organization. So, but there were some rumors that the opposition parties are going to come together and come up with a joint plan to move people back to Hatay to vote. But I haven't heard anything from the officials yet.
Yeah, Marash, I was also looking for any political parties or any kind of, because previously there were different kind of aid organizations or different kind of distribution centers managed by different parties. I haven't seen that in the places that I visited. It was more kind of all the different camps have their own kind of brand. There was this Mado, the kind of pastry shop, container city. Then there was Baykar, the from the drones, that also has its own container city. Then there was the Ülkü Ocakları, that had its own container city. So it's kind of you have all those different affiliations in the camps, kind of, but I haven't seen real political parties doing any kind of information sessions or any kind of. I didn't see them on the field, but it was just 2 days that I was there, so I might have missed them. But people, when I asked people how will it happen? Do you know where you will vote, or do you know? Did you get any information? They are very confident that the voting will happen and that will be organized. They said they will just put up a container, or muhtar or local head of the neighborhood will guide us where to vote, or we will go to the school that are still, since there's a couple of schools still open, they will go there. But it wasn't, they were just mainly confident it would happen, but I haven't seen so much kind of organization in that regard.
Okay, so based on your experiences, you haven't seen much organization, and if you haven't seen it, that's what you can say.
Yeah.
We're getting some questions on YouTube. Have any politicians visited the affected areas? Erdogan's been there several times. Kılıçdaroğlu and Ingrid went initially. I'm not sure when the last time they went was. Have you seen any officials recently
I
Kilis
actually
Eroğlu
bumped into Süleyman Soylu while I was eating künefe. Like, he was visiting a container bazaar and he seemed very like caring actually, because there was a problem with the toilets and the esnaf around the bazaar was complaining about the hygiene and they told it to Süleyman Soylu, and actually like the problem was fixed during the evening, like a couple hours later, and like a künefe shop owner wanted to relocate his shop because it was on the back of the bazaar and not that visible, and it was a like good shop. Then like the Süleyman Soylu also relocated the shop. So my experience with him was like weirdly positive actually in Hatay.
Did he eat künefe? We have to know.
No, he said geçmiş olsun to me only.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Kilis Eroğlu and is attending some silent iftar today in Adıyaman. But yeah, Erdogan has been in Maraş. I spoke to someone that spoke to Erdogan and that complained about the people stealing the help. And he was a big fan of Erdogan though. But he saw like, I mean, there's all this kind of theories going around that, you know, help is ending up at these kind of locations. Well, it should be there, etc. So he was very vocal about that. Some people were stealing the help from others. Told it to Erdogan. Erdogan was, in his own words, like as the guy told me, he was very understanding, and him. I mean, I think it speaks to what I've seen overall in Maraş the last 2 days, that they are really supportive of Erdogan still. I mean, the first time I was here after the earthquakes was 3 days after it happened. People were very emotional, very angry. Of course, there was the where was the state? They've let yok phrases. I mean, that same day that I was there, Erdogan was there as well. I didn't see him personally, but I saw his convoy with all the guys running next to it, passing some kind of rescue operations, and then people were really furious at the state. But now people are telling me, like, we thought we were the only ones. Now we saw the scale of the disaster. We understand that every government would have problems with it. It's in 10 provinces. What are they supposed to do? Look, we have a tent. Look, we have a container. Look, there's this. Also, they, like, some people say that they don't think the opposition will build anything back. They say, like, or they will just build and they don't give it to anyone. I think that there are some strong beliefs that the opposition is not able to build with the same speed as Erdogan is. In addition to some, I mean, to the usual kind of, things that they expect, that they are doing business with the PKK, that like they are saying the HDP and the PKK is the same, that they call it not the table of 6, but the table of 7, implying that like the HDP is like in the same camp as the main 6 opposition parties. So that was, I think, a widely held belief that that Erdogan is the only one that is able to fix this. I mean, there were some people that were supportive of Kilis Eroğlu. There was some guy selling goods also traveling around the villages. He said in those villages people will not vote for him anymore. He saw like not so much support there, but I mean, these villages will probably not make the difference. So I think it can be expected that here, at least in Maraş, there will, I mean, the support, maybe there are a few people that are changing their minds, but I think it's more that the opposition or the opponents of the government are more vocal, are more angry, are louder, then that there's like a lot of people, at least in Maraş, that are changing their minds on their 20 years of voting for Erdogan and his party.
Okay, so you talked to people who were open to changing their voting behavior. We have a question about whether the earthquakes will affect voting behavior. In your opinion, a lot of articles have been coming out on this. I guess it's a personal matter. It depends on who you ask and what they experienced. Can you share anything on people that are sticking with Erdogan or people who are changing, or how they mentally manage some of their hardship, maybe lack of supplies, and continue to support the government? Like, can you just give us some insight into how people are thinking about the government and who they might support?
Should I continue or?
If you have more, sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, so of course, we have seen a campaign by the government to frame this as a natural disaster. Now I saw, I mean, the disaster of the century. Now I've seen billboards that are saying from the disaster of the century to like the solidarity of the century or something. So, I mean, they are getting ahead in their kind of framing. Yeah, and then I also asked some people, like, what about the economy then? I mean, if it's not the earthquake that made them change their minds, what about the economy? But I think they are just what I heard was mostly kind of phrases that fit in the pro-government media that are like, it's not only in Turkey. There were also some people in the market. They said like, it's very cheap. Everything is very cheap still. We don't have any problems, which is hard to believe if you look at the inflation numbers. But yeah, I think these are just kind of like, you hear the echoes of the government media. Yeah, it seems to resonate here at least. And then, of course, Marash is kind of like a religious and also conservative place. They women with headscarves, say like Kılıçdaroğlu and the HAP. They refer to the anti-headscarf policies that the party also had supported previously. The helalleşme. The helalleşme thing of Kılıçdaroğlu, they don't believe. I mean, so I think if you're in this kind of like, if you're so skeptical about opposition, it's, I think, difficult to, to have something that counters Erdogan that is like the CHP, where they had already this long-held beliefs that it's not for, pious Muslims, etc.
Gonca, did you want to add anything?
No, because in Hatay, there are no one, almost like, I haven't met with anyone who still supports Erdogan. And like, even before the earthquake, it was kind of a like half and half in the city. And like Hatay people, the locals, were already feeling like stepson of Turkey even before the earthquake. And now with the recent situation, they are feeling all alone, and they are actually like kind of cutting their ties with the state. Actually, they do not care about the election, because when you are like on a daily survival mode, no one thinks about elections, or no one talks about the elections in the city actually. But it's not that surprising, but something new that I realized, that I spoke with a lot of people who were previously CHP voters, but now considering to vote for Workers' Party of Turkey, TIP, because of their efforts on the field after the earthquake. A lot of people told me that those were the ones who were first with us, and they helped us. They tried to save our loved ones. They distributed blankets when there was no state in here. Those like leftists, those communists with us. So like that old kind of like communism fear is kind of broken in Hatay. Everybody loves the member of Communist Party and the Workers' Party. Actually like the positivity to them is increased. But on the other side, like in Defne, everyone speaks in Arabic. It's in like Arap Alevi community actually, and they voted for the 90% of the votes went to Muharrem İnce during the last presidential elections. And now I believe that Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu probably will break his record on the next elections, at least in Defne, in Hatay. And probably like the overall results from Hatay also will be like in support of the table of six, like Millet İttifakı and the Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu.
Can I just to add something to the people I spoke were mostly older people, because I think many of the younger people or children that they sent them away, and for older people they don't want to start over in another place. But I think that's also like we see, in the among the youth, the vote for Erdogan or the current government is always a little bit less. It's more towards opposition parties. So that's also maybe why it's a little bit not representing it completely, because it was mostly older people that I spoke to. That that are like most people that are still like operating in shops, etc. They are like older, and they tell me we send our children away to Istanbul, Ankara, wherever they have family. So that's also good to keep in mind that, the older population is often staying behind, making like that could make some difference.
Mhm.
And so it's a good point, and I want to add that, like, besides of sending the youth away, also like the people with opportunity, people with more income, people with higher education, actually like leaving those cities were easier for them also. So when we are considering the populations who are now left in the earthquake hit cities, most of those peoples are the ones who cannot afford to relocate to another city, actually. Like in Hatay, it kind of has a romantic and emotional like reasons, but in most of the cities, people didn't leave those cities because they couldn't afford it. So when we see the other polls, when like the income level of the voters increases, their support for AKP, like the support for AKP amongst them increases. So like that can be another explanation for the continuing support for AKP in the earthquake region also.
Great. Did you get a sense of what was the most important for people? Like you mentioned, immediate concerns, survival mode. We have a question about whether rebuilding is a key concern for people in the region. What was most important to them, and where does rebuilding and the speed of reconstruction fit into that? Just for background, Erdogan promised to rebuild many buildings in the next year, while some experts on seismic activity say that's not the best idea because there's still aftershocks that could unsettle foundations of buildings. So what's the most important for people down there?
Yeah, I think, I also like that was also what people told me, is that they didn't believe or that the opposition would rebuild as quickly as Erdogan would. Erdogan has shown he can build a lot of things very fast. So he has a proven track record on that. Indeed, it's questionable if that is the right approach. I also spoke with an urban planner that was very worried about this quick a reconstruction, because it's just building. It's not reconstructing a city. It's just putting buildings in places. But if you're currently living in a tent, and that's not very comfortable. So it's a difficult kind of promise to make. Like, first we have to do research. First we have to do some planning, then we can start. If I was in that situation, maybe I would also have said, like, just give me a house first, and then we'll see. So I think that's also, people know that Erdogan can build stuff, so they cling on to that promise of, I think it was 650,000 houses that they will build, of which at least like 300,000 in the first year. I mean, indeed, we saw some kind of like foundation things, like some construction sites. So I mean, at least the promise, that's something that people hang on to. If those houses will be really there in a year, who knows? But it's at least the promise that it will be built back quickly. That is for some people a real reason to support Erdogan.
Mhm.
I visited the famous like hospital construction site in Hatay that like Erdogan attended the opening ceremony, and there was nothing, actually, no construction work, like no cranes, no nothing. Actually, like basically there were no foundation. So like, and I also haven't like saw any other reconstruction work in Hatay. There were some construction work about the foundations of the container camps, but nothing about a building. Like, so I haven't seen any concrete cranes like actually in the city. For a construction job, we need that thing. No, just only cranes and excavators to remove the rubbles. A lot of trucks carrying those rubbles around the city. And like, but what is the thing people need most is still the accommodation. Like, people do not want to stay in tents. Those are like getting rain or wind and etc. And for Hatay and for other cities in the region, people are actually in fear of summer because winter was bad, but when you put some coat on, it was manageable. But with the summer heat, they don't believe that the tents and the containers are going to be habitable. So it's another problem. We can understand that like the process needs some time to find out how to rebuild the cities or how to do the actual construction work, but people need a roof over their heads actually in the region. And another thing is, especially in Hatay, there is nothing to do for the ones who left actually. They only wake up if they just try to get some food, get some water. If there are any problems with the tents or the living conditions, they fix those. Then the sun sets down and they go to bed, and it's another day, and they are facing with tremors all the day also. So another thing people like yearns more is something to do actually. The ones who reopened their shops, who managed to like open some food stands, etc. All of them actually, and I spoke with a lot of them, they told me that they feel lucky because at least they have something to do during the day. So that's how they forgot what's happening around them and what's happened. So besides of accommodation and the other basic necessities like water and food, people need some kind of normality sense actually in the region right now.
So boredom is a factor. Let's see, we got another question, more specific on the HDP, which is facing a closure case and therefore is running its parliamentary candidates under the Yeşil Sol party, the Green Left party. And we got a question asking if there's been communication in the region for HDP supporters that they should be voting for another party. Have you seen any campaign ads or any kind of stands or party representatives, or let's say people giving out flyers instructing HDP voters to vote for Yeşil Sol party? Are the supporters aware that they are supposed to change to Yeşil Sol? That's the question.
Like in Hatay, HDP has a little like number of voters. They got 1% of the votes in the local elections and 2% of the votes in the last presidential elections. So like they don't have any campaign, but the people I met with who voted for HDP last time, they were aware of the situation since because HDP voters are commonly more has more tight connection to their parties in the overall Turkey. So probably that's why they knew it. So that's the situation in Hatay.
Yeah, I think in Marash is, I mean, maybe apart from some Alawi villages, but I guess they might be more CHP supporters. There's very little support for HDP in Marash. So I haven't seen any HDP representation. I saw a lot of Sana Söz billboards from Kilisdaroğlu, but nothing from HDP. But I think maybe a month ago, I visited the Novruz rally in Istanbul, and then it was not yet. I mean, then it was not officially announced that that the HDP would run under the banner of Yeşil Sol. But for people there, they said whoever Demirtas directs us to, or some other party members, we will vote for them. I think the party has experience with. The Kurdish political movement has experience with closed parties and getting independents to run for parliament. So they are very disciplined. They are very used to be vote on the direction of the party or some other party representatives, either in their community. So I think that will not be the main problem. I mean, the logos look very much the same. I see that HDP is opening their HDP, they are opening their Yeşil Sol party bureaus. So in all the different districts where they have their party offices, they have kind of this opening ceremonies for the Yeşil Sol party. So in that way, they are attracting attention as well. And yeah, I'm sure that the people voting for the HDP, maybe there will be a few people concerned, maybe some people that are illiterate that can't make sense of it. But since also the logos are very much similar, I'm sure that the overwhelming majority will vote for Yeşil Sol, either with implicit or maybe later some explicit direction from either Demirtas or other party officials.
Yeah, and maybe the parts that both of you visited weren't the main HDP supporting areas. They're more east, in Diyarbakir, for example. And there, the urban infrastructure is not as damaged, and I think the messaging is more clear. So we can say that the core HDP supporting areas are getting the message out, we can assume. And let's see. We covered reconstruction. Did we talk about where rubble is being dumped and potential environmental hazards? Have you seen rivers being clogged up by rubble? Is rubble being disposed in an organized manner? Anything you can comment on this?
In Hatay, basically, it's everywhere. The main roads are connecting you to the city. You can see rubbles on the right, on the left. You can see it next to the tent camps, next to the container camps. One area was basically just on the other side of the road to the AFAD building. They are aware of the situation because they were also working next to the rubbles. And if you follow the trucks in the city, you can see that they are also climbing to the mountains, covering the city. So there are several sites that we previously recorded with BBC on the first month of the disaster. They were using volleys with rivers, and in the city center, you can also see that it's it's visible to that they are dumping rubbles just onto the Orontes River, Alsi, actually. So there is no system, there is no operation for it. There are trucks everywhere, dust everywhere, and troubles everywhere, basically, in Hatay.
Yeah, Marash, I think the amount of rubble is not the same as in Hatay. I haven't seen those. I mean, I saw trucks going into, roads that you don't know where they lead to. So I guess there will be some dumping site, but I haven't personally seen that in great detail.
Mhm. Thanks. We got a question on relations between Syrians in the area and Turkish citizens. From my experience, usually they're in separate tent camps. Syrians will be in one area of, displaced camp, and Turks will be in another. Or what have you seen? How's it going between Syrians and Turks?
In some temporary settlements, like Syrians and Turks were living together, like Turks and Kurds and Arabs, actually. Like it's a very multicultural city, like the Hatay. And this time, actually, I spoke with a lot of locals, and a lot of them were very angry about the stories that we all heard about Syrians stealing things, Syrians stealing aid and donation and etc. Like at least 5 people told me stories about how their Syrian neighbors helped them to save their loved ones in the first morning. And they told stories about how like Syrian neighbors were distributing blankets to the cold ones and etc. And they told me we didn't have any problem because we were living together. And actually, like for the ones who not know Hatay before the earthquakes, actually like the tension between 2 communities were actually like significantly lower than the other cities of Turkey in Hatay, since historically those 2 communities were like very familiar to each other. They were actually like basically families in sometimes, because like a lot of people from Antakya has some family members in the Syrian part of the region also. So actually like when I was there first time, it was not a thing that we had a chance to talk about. And it was like, they didn't hear about those stories when they were struggling about their life also. But when they had a chance to just like take a look on what happened to them and what was the stories told, a lot of people were very angry about those kind of topics. Actually, they said like those weren't true. Those were, especially in Hatay, a lot of people told that those are the words of the outsiders, nothing like it happened here, and etc. etc.
Yeah, and I think in Marash it's a little bit different. In the afternoon, I was in a camp. I mean, a small camp where Syrian and Turks were living together without seemingly any problems. But previously, I was parking somewhere, and some guy said, "Oh, please drink tea." So I was like, "Okay." And then he was like, "Oh, those Syrians, don't go to that part of town. They are the Syrians." I was like, "Okay. Why not?" Yeah, they're problematic. It's problems. It's something we have heard in the last couple of years, maybe, but especially maybe last year or something. Unfortunately, not very surprising. It's also something that they say, of course, Syrians are taking all the aid. Blah blah. I think there's not any kind of reports that is true actually, but still, it's how people believe this. I think unfortunately, not very surprising that this kind of discrimination continues.
And I actually realized another kind of like discrimination in Hatay. Most of the people who defended Syrians to me, they were actually very hostile against a small ethnic minority called Doms. Those are like a branch of Roma people in Hatay. They were living in the city before the earthquake. And when people just try to like assure you about how Syrians are good people, those people mostly say that, oh, the thieves were not the Syrians, the thieves were the Doms, the Roma people. And in some neighborhoods, actually, like the NGOs and the AFAD are trying to relocate Dom neighborhoods with other ones, and the local peoples are actually like do not want to stay in the same tent camps with the Dom people and etc. It was the most obvious hostility against the minority in Hatay I like faced during my last time actually.
Mhm. Yeah. I witnessed similar events and comments. In Hatay, it was generally easier, I would say, for community relations. But Marash, I would reiterate what Ingrid said. There was definitely more discrimination. I parked my car when I was there shortly after the earthquake near a Syrian neighborhood, and locals asked me why I would park there, and that I should move it immediately because there's many thieves over there. So that's what I heard. We have one more question. Let me see. University dormitories. Do we know if people are using university dormitories still? Do we have updates on that? I haven't been following that.
In Izmir, college students told me that they were evacuated from the dormitories and now those buildings are empty, but I don't have solid information on that topic.
I think in Marash, what I heard from aid workers, that the university was turned into a tent camp kind of. Inside there were like just beds, and outside there were tents on the campus. So it was used as as kind of like a shelter for people. It's also different, of course. I mean, probably many students left as well from here. Then in other places like Izmir, for instance, there most of the students might be still around, but in Mars, I think most of the university students left. One because they left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to wrap up, Turkey suffered a devastating earthquake in 1999 near Istanbul. 17,000 people died. Turkey is a country that is on several fault lines. Earthquakes are common, especially very strong ones. So to finish, do you think that this earthquake could change the way that the government operates or that building codes are enforced? And if not, what would it take for change to come, considering Turkey's in an earthquake zone? How can we prevent this from repeating again and maybe saving lives?
Okay, I can comment. Like, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I don't believe like anything meaningful will change, because when we talk about whose fault was that about this disaster, it was not just the fault of the constructors. The municipalities were a part of this process, the government, the MPs who voted for the recent the construction amnesty were a part of this disaster. So if those people wanted to take an action about it, it could have been very easy for them to do it. And actually the construction code after the 1999 earthquake was kind of a good one, actually. No big faults and etc. I studied civil engineering. That's how I know about this topic, actually. But you need to inspect those. And when you do not have any functioning system to inspect every step of the process, there is nothing we can do about it, actually. The security numbers in the designing in construction is very high in order to minimize the human fault, actually. But when you do not use the system well enough, it's always open to faults. And how can we prevent another disaster to repeat? We should change it starting by the first step and etc. but I'm not very hopeful about it. So sorry to like sound pessimistic.
Yeah, and I think good to remind that there has not been any resignation based on the after the earthquake happened. I mean, what Gonca says, there were like on all levels, local constructors, construction companies, municipalities, and all the way until Ankara. I think Erdogan said last week that they will not do any building amnesty anymore. It's kind of like the obvious thing to say. But yeah, and I think will it change anything? I'm also not so sure. It's kind of weird also to see in Maraş also things are going back to normal. Not normal, but some kind of normal. Which yeah, that's really weird to see. But I think in order for things to change, also I think the mentality needs to change, because for instance, I've recently done a story about earthquake risk in Istanbul. I talked to the Istanbul municipality person responsible for the earthquake management, and they were supposed to inspect around like 120,000 houses, but they could only get permission to enter around 25% of that. So I mean, I think that's kind of telling about how there's how the mentality kind of is, because on the one hand, there are people who know that their house is not safe, that it's not going to pass the earthquake test, but they don't want to know. I mean, they try to ignore it. For other people, it might be too expensive to find a new house, or they don't know where else they will go. There might also be local constructors involved that are living in the house that know that maybe it will not pass the test. So I was really shocked by that number, actually. But it's also kind of, I think, a really difficult dilemma in Istanbul, but also in other parts of the country, that if you know your house is not safe, but you also know it will be very difficult and very expensive to find a safe house how would you know that houses are safe? So I mean, there are people that move, but they are people that are more privileged. So yeah, I think this is something that made the earthquake threat come to the front of the mind more often, and you look with different eyes to your city, also Istanbul, not only in terms of housing, but also in terms of where do I go if an earthquake happens? Is there any green open area? I mean, there are not so many green open areas left in Istanbul. So yeah, I also don't want to sound too alarmistic. So I mean, there's many questions on that aspect that I think are not really answered, or that people are working on, but will take some time. So yeah, I mean, I also would want to say something more hopeful. I mean, can I say? I mean, still I'm really surprised by how people continue. I mean, it's 2 months ago that more than 50,000 people died. It's still, I mean, impossible to comprehend for me. I mean, I passed by the graveyard in Maraş today, and when you're there, then you see this rows and rows of graves and people coming there mourning, and then yeah, it's just unimaginable what a big trauma, what a big disaster it's been. So in that sense, I'm really how people are managed to continue parts of their lives. Yeah, I mean, it's something that seems really difficult to me. But on the other hand, I think there will not be so much fundamental change in other aspects.
Yeah, just around the corner from my house in Beyoğlu, I saw poorly constructed building torn down. It's being removed as part of this urban renovation program that the government has. And, you know, some houses get removed in Ankara as well, under those guidelines, just saying they were built without the proper materials. So we have this going on. It's just slow. And can it have the renovating impact that it needs to have before the next big earthquake? I think that's the big question. I'll wrap up. We don't have more questions. I appreciate everybody that joined and sent questions, and thank you to Ingrid and Gonca for your honest and on-the-ground reporting. We'll continue to cover the earthquake region, and we appreciate everyone that reads and watches our productions. Have a good evening, and see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.